kind of a sentimental final stretch here. I feel like we've come out of the fourth turn and we're sprinting toward the finish.
Leave it to the governor of Indiana. He used a racing metaphor to describe his final days as Indiana's 51st governor. In his final sit-down interview with 13 News, Governor Janet Holcomb touted the capital investment in Indiana he secured during his time in office.
We have evolved over time, and we're not just in the conversation, we're in the room where these small, medium, and large mega deals are being done.
Some of those deals, Holcomb said, he'll be handing over to Indiana's next governor.
My goal is to leave the cupboard full, the pipeline full. So there are deals that, had I had another year, I would have been working on.
Do solemnly swear.
Holcomb's 8 years in office weren't without challenges. One of the biggest, a global pandemic.
Probably something you weren't necessarily expecting.
No.
When you came into office. You took a lot of heat during that time.
Holcomb was criticized by some in his own party for overstepping his bounds by issuing a mask mandate. Hoosiers also staged protests outside the governor's mansion over the closure of schools and businesses. None of that shaped what Holcomb thinks about how his administration handled such an unprecedented event.
I'm proud of the way that we conducted ourselves, never got off course, let the facts drive us as we knew them on a daily basis. We were a strong state going into the pandemic. We are a much stronger state post the pandemic. I will mention, post the pandemic, we had an election. This administration, I got more votes than anyone that ran for the office before or since.
2 years into his second term, Indiana became the first state to pass a near total abortion ban during a special session after the United States Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. Holcomb signed the ban into law after weeks of protests from thousands of Hoosiers on both sides of the issue.
I believe, according to my conscience, that it was the right thing to do to sign that bill into law. I think the state will be remembered for kind of turning that corner. I think also the future on this topic will be all about trying to persuade hearts and minds the other way, like they were for the past 50 years, trying to become more of a pro-life state.
Holcomb hasn't always been in lockstep with his party on other controversial issues. During the 2022 legislative session, he vetoed another bill on an issue that saw passionate support on both sides, a ban on trans girls participating in girls' school sports. At the time, Holcomb said a policy from the Indiana High School Athletic Association covered that issue, and a law was unnecessary and opened the state up to legal challenges. Lawmakers overturned his veto, and the ban became law.
It might have made some feel better that this law was passed, but it certainly did nothing. It added no progress to what was in place before.
The following year, more legislation impacting the trans community. This time, a proposal to ban doctors from prescribing hormone therapies and puberty blockers for trans youth. Holcomb called the bill clear as mud and then signed it.
Procedures that change permanently one's body, such as their gender, should be made when they're an adult and should not be when they're 8 or 11 years old and going through a lot of change like we all go through.
Even through the many controversial issues Holcomb saw during his time as governor, he hopes Hoosiers remember him as one who stayed steady through it all.
When Hoosiers look back on your time as governor, what do you hope they will remember as Eric Holcomb's legacy?
I hope people feel like this was a time of not just growth, but opportunity. I hope folks are optimistic in reflection and equally so about the future.